Right, we have our quorum and we have a very light agenda, so we'll probably be very quick. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Today is Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. We're in the City Hall auditorium participating via Zoom. We have Board of Finance member Lance Boynton participating in person, member Lorraine Pesky, member Christopher Anderson, Christopher Bayes, and Jim Wright. Before we begin the meeting, could we all stand and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sorry, drop your stuff and stand, right? All right. Item number one, I will entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are open to the public. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the board at this time? All right, we'll move into item two. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting held on June 15th, 2021.
So second.
I heard Mr. Wright and I heard Mr. Bayes. Questions on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item three, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the transfer of surplus funds from the 2020-2021 fiscal year Board of Education operating budget to the 21-22 Board of Education capital budget. Actually, I don't even think we need the fiscal year. It's capital reserve. So it would be to authorize the surplus funds from the 2021 Board of Education operating budget to the Board of Education capital reserve budget, and the total amount of $544,000 for the projects that were described in Mr. Aram's memo dated June 17th, 2021. Do you have a motion?
Move for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Bayes, and the floor is open for discussion. Questions? And the only other thing that I would like to add to this is being done in accordance with the state statute, section 10-248A. And if Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bayes would amend their motion.
Of course.
Thank you.
So moved.
All right, if there are no questions.
I guess my only question was when we were together last time with some of the Board of Ed members were there. I'm surprised this didn't come up at that time.
Actually, it did. So when we were doing the deliberation for the adoption of the budget and setting of the mill rate, the discussion was with regard to the projected surplus that the Board of Education was anticipating. And at that time, I think the numbers were 444,000, but that did not include, or that was in anticipation of the turf field funds that have been for the last several years being sunk into capital reserve.
Okay, so I stand corrected. We did have that conversation. I thought this was something in addition to that.
No, that was
my big question too. Was it the one that we already talked about, or is this another surplus over and above the first one?
No, it's one and the same.
Super easy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Other questions or comments for the board or Mr. Aram or Superintendent Lebomsky? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item four, I will entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Around the room. I don't know, Superintendent Lebomsky, did you want to add anything this evening?
I just wanted to thank you. Very
Yeah.
efficient.
I'm sorry, did we lose audio?
Okay, can you hear us now, Lance?
I can.
Good, okay. Alice, I don't know if you can hear us or if you had anything to add.
I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 5. I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pesky.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Starting from my right, Ms. Pesky, anything this evening?
Yes, can you help us understand the ARPA funding, or help me understand the ARPA funding a little bit better?
Sure.
Part of the city budget cuts
Mhm.
that you proposed to us where, how we were going to make this a 0 mil increase. There were 2 items in that, 50% city pension normal costs to ARPA and 50% P&F normal costs to
Yes.
ARPA. I'm confused because from what I read, ARPA money can't be used in pensions.
Yes, so when we were reading it, we were reading that it cannot be used for any of the unfunded liability. However, any portion of the pensions, which is a part of the normal payroll,
That's
which
the
this would
difference.
be,
It's
that
the
is the
normal.
difference. Yes,
Oh, it's the
yeah.
normal. Okay.
However, I will tell you, when we were throwing those numbers out, the question that was posed was, where would you find $2 million and how would this impact the city? Those were, the throw it against the wall and a quick assessment. If we have to find this today, where would we look? What lines would we explore first? And those are the ones we identified. I will tell you, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've fine-tuned that. I don't see us using those cuts that are in there the way they've been itemized.
And the other thing that you explained to us was how Torrington was going to access those funds.
Yes.
And because we were a city under 50,000,
Correct.
that we had to make application for them.
Did not need to make application for them, but that the funds are funneled through the state of Connecticut. So all of the municipalities where you have a population over 50,000, the federal government sent those funds directly to the municipality. I believe they had their funds sometime in the middle of May. The populations under 50,000, all of the funds were sent to the state, and from the state, they would be sent to the municipalities. And I believe 3 weeks ago, we did receive our
We did
first.
receive ours.
We have our
That
5
That
million.
was what I was leading up to. Because
Absolutely.
I've seen in the newspaper, lots of smaller communities
Yes.
have their money, but we've got ours.
Yes, yeah, I received confirmation. It was the last week of June.
And what is the total?
So that amount was, off the top of my head, 5,037,000 and change.
Okay.
And that's the first tranche. The second payment comes in next year at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Is that it for?
That's for me.
Okay,
Yes, thank
all
you.
right. Mr. Anderson.
It's always hard to follow. No, nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Bayes.
Nothing this evening.
Mr. Wright.
Just a quick question on the animal shelter.
Yes.
Is that being funded? I wasn't totally clear on what had happened there.
So as you all know, the 2018 referendum question that was approved by the voters authorized us to borrow $1 million to build the facility. Bids came in almost $2 million. So we couldn't move forward in the project without figuring out how to raise the rest of the money. We, through the budget process, determined that there were ways, because of the road bonding that was taking place, that we could take this 1 year and move some of that road improvement funds into the animal control facility, and utilize those funds coupled with the $1 million that we can bond and that we should get to that $2 million number. So we went out to bid again, and the bids came back at 2.7 million. Still not enough money to do the project. So in April, I received several emails from our federal delegation, Senator Murphy, Congresswoman Hayes, Congressman Larson, about these community project grants that were available. So I did apply to, through the offices of Johanna Hayes and Congressman Larson. Johanna Hayes picked it up, advanced it. I received a phone call from her the week I was on vacation saying it's made it through the first cut. I received a phone call from her last Thursday saying it's made it through the second round of cuts, that we're 75% of the way there for approval. She released a press release about the project, which is why the newspapers picked it up. And we're waiting for the last vote on the budget, which I understand won't happen until the end of September. So our fingers are crossed that extra $1.1 million. I asked for $2 million. She wrote back and said, you're in for $1.1 million. But that 1.1 plus the million that we already have and moving some of that road money around might get us there.
Closer.
It is, yes. So remains yet to be seen, but of course, any decisions on that would come back to not only this board, but to the city council as well.
As a follow-up to that, is there any reason why the original specs,
Yes.
why that was so far off in terms of thinking, how much was this going to cost?
You know, this animal control facility has been in the planning stages for the past 15 years. I have feasibility studies that were done back in 2010. So what happened is working with the engineer, I think the directive that was given to the engineer through the COG, because this was all planned through the Council of Government as a regional animal control facility. The directive that went to the engineers was, we want you to bring it in at a cost of $1 million. Design it so that it will cost us $1 million. Believing that under $1 million, you don't have to worry about prevailing wages. You don't have to worry about some of those other Davis-Bacon rules. And the engineers did the best that they could. Timing of that first bid was not good. The economy was opening up. Things were really looking very good. Contractors were very busy, and the bids came in very high. Second time around, we went out to bid. Contractors are still busy, but now building material has gone through the roof, the cost of building materials. So it's one of those things through the budget process. I think you all heard me say, my concern was that every time we delay it, the costs just go up. And if we don't figure out a way to get this thing done as soon as possible, that we're going to face another attempt to go out to bid with a price tag that we just can't meet. That's essentially where we are. Other questions? Mr. Boynton, any comments for this evening?
My only comment is just really exciting to see that the Warner is coming back to life. Got a couple emails this past week, and it's just nice to see some familiar faces that have been closed down for quite a while.
I agree. All right, if there,
Go
ahead. Yeah.
Me again, sorry. When you say the ARPA second payment of the ARPA money is next year, is that still in this fiscal year? I know we have, and until when do we have to expend those funds?
So the next, let's see, 6/21 was the date that we received the ARPA funds. So potentially it would be in the fiscal year, but keep in mind that these funds are grant funds outside of our regular revenues. So we're not beholden to the same fiscal year spending. We do have until December 31st of 2024 to spend these funds. And we have started meeting just internally to go through all of the funding objectives, ventilation, measures on how to prevent or address COVID-related pandemic response is high on the list of funding objectives. We do have a number of things that can be done to address those objectives. We immediately right off the top set aside the $569,281 that was part of the budget adoption for the Board of Education to access. And our next step from this internal process is to then bring in our other partners on this. That would be the Board of Education, Torrington Area Health District, Charlotte Hungerford Hospital, Community Health and Wellness, to go through the funding objectives with us, and then start a very public process as to what we can spend it on, what we identify as a priority for spending, and get feedback from the public as to whether or not they feel that we're on track with what the priority should be. So a little more work to do before we start spending it, but yeah. But I think that's the important process, because in all of the piece of legislation, all of the FAQs and the guidance documents, they do strongly encourage a public process. I've been following other municipalities. I know that they're spending their money, and I don't know that there's been a whole lot of public process for them. And I just feel it's important that we're still small enough that people are paying very close attention to the kinds of questions that you just asked, and those are opportunities that we'd be able to address their concerns.
And when we have to spend it by 12/31/24, is that actually expend the funds, or can they be encumbered? So I'm talking, so if a project is going to go beyond that, but if we've encumbered the money, because if we decide, there are some things that take longer to get started.
Yes, I believe encumbered is the correct word, but I can actually, I'll verify that.
Because that'll be
Yeah.
important to know in terms of what, if we have to actually spend it, well, then what are we going to spend it on that we can get that done in that
Absolutely.
period of time?
Yes. Other thoughts or questions? Timing for that whole process, we hope that by mid-August or late August, that we will have something that we can present to the public in the way of a public informational. Of course, bringing it to the City Council, bringing it to the Board of Finance would be a part of that process as well. Last call for questions. Seeing and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.